I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on Earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. We discuss our own paranormal experiences and celebrate this terrifying city that's built upon its dead. Presented by the team that brought you America's #1 immersive horror experience, the Savannah Underground. Prepare to cross the veil into the most haunted city on Earth. Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Most Haunted City on Earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And today we have Mindy with us. Yes, Mindy is actually the reason why we created the Woman with Mismatched Fingers film. So Mindy, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit further?
Yeah, sure. I'm Mindy. I'm 28. I live in Mobile, Alabama, and I have a nightmare disorder.
There you go.
I'm so sorry. I think we said that when we read your ghost mail the first time, like when you said, you're like, I have a nightmare disorder. And we're like, oh God, that's like the worst thing you could have. Oh my gosh. But yes, so Mindy sent in one of the creepiest stories that we've gotten in ghost mail about this woman with mismatched fingers, and she sent a handprint that was on your car door, right?
It was on my front door.
On the front. Ugh. Oh my God. Oh God. Well, and when the film comes out, which it's coming out when this is airing tomorrow, and so you'll see we added little shots of different things from the ghost mail, so you'll notice some similarities. So go back and listen to Mindy's ghost mail episode, and then watch the film. And so the film is going to actually be on YouTube. So it's going to be the Parajunkies have already seen it at this point, but you can watch it on YouTube. It'll be there forever, pretty much. It's going to be public for.
And you can just stay up late tonight to watch it.
Yeah, technically you could. It's going to air at midnight, so you can watch it there. And make sure to subscribe while you're over on our YouTube if you don't already. And you know, if you want to support us even more, let it just play on a loop on silent and just rack up them views, because the more that we view it, the more YouTube acknowledges us. So let's go ahead and dive right on into it. So for those who may have not listened to the Ghost Mail episode, Mindy, do you want to kind of give us an overview of kind of like what the situation was with the woman with mismatched fingers?
Yeah, sure. So for about 3 days straight, I had the same exact dream about a woman with mismatched fingers, that one tall, one short, one tall, trying to get into my apartment. And on the fourth morning of the third night, I realized that I hadn't had that dream. And whenever I went to work, I saw that the handprint of her hand up, down, was right on my door, and it freaked me out so bad, but I tried to ignore it, went home after work. Nighttime comes around, I lay down in bed to go to sleep, and I look up, and there's the handprint on my ceiling. Yeah.
That is...
That's the overview.
Oh my God.
Terribly messed up.
Terribly. And like, so in your dreams, did it kind of like, did you get any idea of like who this person could have been, like what the entity, like, you know, like why the entity chose you, or any kind of context of why is her fingers like this?
I have no clue. I've never experienced something like that with hands or anything. During my dream, I was watching her from behind, going around to all my windows and my door. So I don't really know who or what it was. It just came along, I guess.
Bizarre. So has it ever happened like with any of your other nightmares or things like that? Or was this like a very singular experience?
That one was singular. Most of my nightmares have to do with like abandoned places and trying to escape from them. They mainly have zombies for some reason.
I mean, zombies are horrifying. It's
Yeah.
I just find it interesting that it's like usually you don't dream of like these monsters. I mean, besides zombies, but it's like that all of a sudden you would just have a dream that's reoccurring with
Very
a
specific. Yeah.
very specific entity. And because like I remember when we were talking about this on Ghostmail, we were so dumbfounded almost of like what this entity could have been, considering the fact that it's like you don't have a history with this, like you
Yeah.
and the handprints what really sold us in the regard of it being just so odd of a incident, because I've just never heard of an entity that has those mismatchy kind of fingers. Or
Yeah, when we really, we're putting it to analysis, and I was saying, there's a familiarity to the long finger things, and I recalled that there is a Louisiana witch monster called Madame Grandoit, which is Madame Longfingers, and she is a child snatcher. She's kind of a Krampus-like character. She's a seasonal, like I think she comes out at New Year's Eve. And she has these long fingers to, pick children out of their beds. But another thing that came to mind was when non-human entities try to mimic humans, they get it wrong. There's always something that gets it wrong. And one of the clearest things that we're going through right now is if you do an AI picture of somebody, oftentimes their hands are so messed up because the computer it's missing like some element of the full recognition or cognition of the human form, that it messes up the hands. So then comes this idea that you're dealing with something that is trying to appear human but is missing it. Just, it has that one telltale sign that it's not human, and it's the hands, these horribly mismatched hands.
What do I want to know what the doctors say about the disorder.
Oh, okay. So for those of y'all who can't hear JT, JT actually asked what doctors say. Like, how did the process of like getting to the point where a doctor diagnosed you with a nightmare disorder kind of go?
So it's actually pretty new. I would say about 3 years ago, I actually started therapy, and my therapist was just asking me questions, and I was telling her like, oh, I have nightmares constantly. Is that not normal? And then she told me to start writing all my dreams in a journal. And during one of our sessions, she just read through the journal and was like, this is terrifying. I need you to stop.
Oh, no.
Yeah, basically, what doctors like to have is your family history, but I was raised in foster care, so I don't really have that history. So we kind of just had to wait a couple of months to figure out, oh, this is a pattern. This might be this. And that's just how it came along.
And how long have you had these nightmares? I mean, has this always been your whole life, or?
I would say my whole life, but I'm so used to it that I just consider them dreams.
Right.
But whenever I moved out of my foster parents' house and started college, that's when everything got like more intense. I would say because I was learning how to be an adult and just being out on my own. That's whenever I was like, I think I need to talk to somebody about this.
Absolutely.
I mean, and that makes sense. It's, I can't imagine going to sleep every day and like having a nightmare, but it's interesting that you say that it's like, most of the time it could be rationalized almost, like why these nightmares are happening. Like it's because typically, even though dreams and nightmares do tend to go hand in hand with paranormal stuff every once in a while, a lot of times it is just your psyche working through something really bizarre. But I wonder if this entity in particular didn't note that you had this situation and it preyed upon it in the way,
Sure.
because entities sometimes, when they know that they can be acknowledged through dreams and stuff, they'll come through in that way to deliver messages. And I guess sometimes they can also try to get into your house in the middle of the night. Because it's just like, I've just never heard a story quite like the fact that it's like where the dream turns into an actual physical entity where it's able to leave a handprint. That's a really
So
bizarre situation to wrap my head around, at least.
I think I have heard things similar. I have heard of the nightmare that then has some kind of waking world effect, where sometimes it's as simple as waking up in the middle of the night with this nightmare scenario that something is wrong in the children's room, and then when you go into the children's room, there's the child had fallen out of the crib but hadn't made any noise or something to that effect. The awareness of something going on in the physical world that is, I used to have terrible nightmares. I had 2 periods of time when I had just god awful nightmares. And I used to have a recurring nightmare from like early childhood into my 20s about being murdered. And so, it's interesting when you start to like really start balancing. It's like, well, what was your brain really trying to hone in on, and what were the incidences that would lead you to latch on to these kinds of things? Because ideally, when you're asleep, your brain is processing information, fragments of consciousness, images from your life, and putting it into a narrative, because your brain craves a narrative. And that narrative is, oftentimes, bizarre flights of fancy, strange, peculiar things. But if you have high anxiety and high stress, then it's going to take all those stressful images and those anxious elements and put them in a line. And then, if you are fitful and you have nightmares repeatedly, if you're in the presence of an entity that is looking for a host or for a connection, an anchor to this world, then, and think about that. Like, imagine, let me weave a tale for you. Imagine that you are, staying in a home that has in its walls a dark entity, and this dark entity is just there and not able to present itself or manifest or do anything. And then there's a person who wakes up in the middle of the night, in starts and fits. All of a sudden, the disruption of the energy of the night is now, oh, there's something here. Oh, that person's aware. That person's awake. That person is there. And it just focuses in. It starts to draw in to the source of this new consciousness in the middle of the sleeping night. And now it has a door. And then you become the door for whatever it is. Not to say that's what's happening. It's just to posit a theory on the kinds of interactions you can have, because there are people who believe fully that there is a dream realm, like it's a dimension of its own, that when we go into our dreams, we're actually astral projecting. We're going to a place that is occupied by entities that are trapped in that realm, but could conceivably push through to our world just the way we are pushing through to theirs. So, and that is a bizarre theory that is a out there construct. But it's not uncommon to think that we go to dreamlands, we go to dream realms when we go to sleep. And those dream realms are occupied. They're not, and they're shared. That's another thing. If you've ever experienced people who had shared dreams, who have this notion that, when they go to sleep, they go to a place and they see their friends, and their friends are like, I dreamt about you last night. I dreamt about you last night. And you have this, interesting connective thing. So there's beliefs that allow for the idea that you go to a dark part of dreamland and the dark denizens of dreamland see you and they're like, oh, let's follow that one.
Right.
And they follow you right back into the waking world.
Well, and it's kind of in that same realm of I don't know if you ever heard people say like if you lucid dream, ask somebody in your dream what time it is, and like watch how they all get really angry or something like that. It's a really bad thing to do. You should not do that. But
Never.
because you're not supposed to be able to cognitively ask questions and things like that in your dreams. And that kind of led me to wondering is like, have you ever had any kind of like astral projecting type sensations, or has like any like even loved ones come to visit you in dreams or things like that? Because a lot of times dreams tend to go with people who are claircognizant, and because dreams, like being able to have dreams or interact with spirits in dreams, is a subsection of claircognizance. So it makes me wonder if you don't have like a little bit of that as well going on.
So I never even thought about the astral projecting until the TikTok was posted of y'all reading my story, and somebody said, I don't think she's dreaming. I think she's projecting. And I was like, please don't.
Well, your dream, you're following the entity trying to get into your house, which sounds like an astral projection, which sounds like you left your body and you're following this thing trying to get into your house, which is interesting because it may be you have incredible psychic protection, meaning your subconscious knows when danger is near and left your body to investigate, to figure out what it was. So, you know, that puts the lady with mismatched fingers, it puts her in a category of she might be to the locale of where their house was.
Right.
She may be,
that's interesting.
You know, something of that place and was coming. And your mind said, oh, there's something outside. Oh, there's something that wants in. You know, and it didn't derive from you. It is, you know, you had a defense mechanism that was like, hey, pay attention. This thing wants in the house, and it was showing you her trying to get into the house. And where was this again? The events of the mismatched finger lady.
It's my apartment in Alabama.
Oh, you still live there?
Yes, I still live here.
Excellent.
God.
Okay, never mind. No, I meant nothing of that. No, but it might be interesting to look into the folklore of that region.
Yeah.
You know, because there might be some kind of telltale thing. Because the other thing about like mangled hands, there's a number of interesting like mangled hand things. The mangled hand thing that comes quickly to mind is during many of the Inquisition and witch trial eras, hand torture was a big way to get people to confess. You know, pressing hands, applying screws to the hands, you know, just doing terrible things to the hands was a big thing in that regard. One of the oldest protective charms on the planet is an image of a hand, with the eye and the lotus, the flowers coming off of it. Yep. And that is, you know, one of those things where it's like the hand has always been kind of this symbol of protection. So when it's warped, when it is distorted, you're now looking at, you know, something terrible. You know, many people think of the hand of God coming in and helping. Well, what is a mangled hand? What is what is this perversion of a hand? Because if a normal hand is the symbol of help, then what is, you know, the mangled and mismatched hand? What is it telling us?
Chegou a melhor parte do podcast. É hora de provar a melhor Coca-Cola. A Coca-Cola sem açúcar. O sabor irresistível da Coca-Cola, sem açúcar e igualmente refrescante. Coca-Cola sem açúcar. A melhor escolha.
pausa rapidinho agora para falar de dica de ouro para os papais e mamães. Depois de experimentar a nova Hug Supreme Care fralda roupinha, tudo ficou ainda melhor pro meu filho. É a única com canais em X que se adaptam aos movimentos, com 2 vezes proteção noturna e cintura elástica que se adapta ao corpinho do bebê, além de ser super fácil de colocar e tirar. Praticidade pura. Então guarda essa dica. Nova Hug Supreme Care fralda roupinha. Bebê, estamos juntos nessa, mais do que nunca. Agora curta seu podcast.
So yeah, I would look into like the region and see if there are any stories.
Oh, I'm gonna hijack it again. I was gonna
You want me to?
Yeah,
I will Google it.
Google Alabama hand lady or something. I don't know.
Alabama hand lady. Yeehaw!
Title of the episode.
Hang on, I'm putting my safe search on.
Because I find that I was thinking the exact same thing, because a lot of times, so actually the man who made the hands for the film was a man who has been on the podcast. He's one of JT's best friends. He also had nightmare issues when he was a child, and he also had an experience that he talked about on the podcast about astral projecting. But his entities that usually came to him, he correlated to his culture because he's from Venezuela. So I find we've heard this a lot about different entities are attracted to different people depending on their nationality or their culture in general, because they can sense what is the space?
Well, the first thing that came up was Witch in the Woods.
Ooh.
Oh,
Do you live in the woods?
I actually live in the middle of town.
Oh, okay.
But during that time, I was planning a solo hiking trip.
Oh, interesting.
It's in Gadsden. Gadsden?
Gadsden County.
Yeah, Gadsden, Alabama. Legend says a woman was a witch who lived in a shack deep in the woods, and her evil soul still lingers on to frighten and bedevil the good folk of Alabama.
It went from country to like Tolkien in like 2 seconds. But,
Oh, I'm sorry. I was supposed to read it like that.
yes.
Ooh, there's a Hell's Gate in Oxford.
What was that, Jay?
Were there any parts of the movie that seemed ultra realistic
Yes.
to your dream?
So JT asked, were there any parts of the movie that were particularly realistic to the dream?
When she was reaching for the doorknob, I could not watch it. I watched it like 3 times, and I only forced myself to see that scene of her hand going towards the doorknob once.
Oh. Yeah, that was JT's idea, because he loves those types of like moments, those very like intense but small moments.
Yes.
And I agree, because the fingers were so perfect to like, you only see like them kind of going down, but you can see how gnarled they are. And when we were filming that, it was pitch black outside. It was pouring down rain, and we were just in Chris's house with no lights on, and I'm like, this is horrifying.
It's pretty scary.
This is so freaky, you know? So I can't imagine having an actual Alabama hand lady coming at you, because
There's also a spirit in Alabama called Huggin' Molly.
ew.
The Legend of Hugging Molly. It's unique to the town of Abbeville, but it is apparently a woman who comes to hug you.
Ew. I don't want to be
She's
hugged
a
by
woman
her.
who is said to have lost an infant and now appears to children, but only at night. And she would squeeze them tightly and then scream in their ears.
Are there any other nightmares that she had that are like of that caliber?
7 feet tall. She was 7 feet tall.
Ugh.
Oh, wait. This figure is 7 feet tall, wearing dark clothing and a wide-brimmed hat.
The Abbeville, yeah, and
The Abbeville Hat Man.
yes, who likes to hug people. Ugh.
The huggy
huggy
kind of
hat
ghost. Nobody wants the huggy kind of ghost.
So another question is, did you have like any other nightmares in particular that were kind of like up to that caliber, or was that kind of like the top tier? I mean, that would be top tier in general, but
Yeah, it's definitely in my top tier because it happened 3 nights in a row. I don't think I've had any last more than a night. But, like, throughout that night, I'll have the same dream over and over again.
Sure.
But it will only last for one night.
And
There hasn't been anything close to that.
Right. Which does make it feel like it was something kind of in the locale or might have been passing through the area or whatever it be, and it just kind of noted that it's like, ooh, this might be a good spot. Do you live like on like the first floor or something, and maybe that could have been a situation?
It's only a 1-story apartment.
Oh,
But it was a house that they renovated to be 3 apartments. Maybe somebody lived here before me.
ooh. Yeah, it's just the fingers though. Like, were they so I think where I'm getting hung up is like, were the fingers like, did they look like they were different fingers sewn on? Did they look like a deformity? Like what kind of fingers are we talking here? Like,
They were a deformity. You could tell that they belonged on her hand. They were just different sizes.
weird. You know, because it's like, I mean, so the thing is with entities that have, like, who died with an injury, they have to be aware of sustaining that injury, like when they had passed, to actually have that as like a ghost or a spirit. But it also makes me wonder if maybe she was a corrupted individual because, like, maybe whenever she was alive, and this is just saying if she was like an actual living human being, but I'm
Right.
not fully convinced because of crawling on the ceiling and stuff. That's not convincing me. But if we are talking in the realm of if she was a at one point living human being, it wasn't uncommon for people who had disabilities or natural deformities to be shunned.
Yep.
And sometimes people, when they are shunned by society, they become corrupt. And so it's possible she was, you know, like, I don't know what she would have gained by scaring the crap out of you besides maybe just like, you know, that energy, and that's what's sustaining her. But the reason why it doesn't, you know, completely convince me is because usually entities that were living don't crawl on the ceiling. I've never really heard of a spirit that was like, you know, Uncle Joe, he likes to crawl
on the ceiling.
He likes to crawl on the ceiling now. It's like, maybe with the child spirit, maybe if they figure out how to do that. But, you know, it's like that would be the only one. What is that? That's horrifying, Chris.
Yeah.
But anywho, but yes, so I guess like since you have all these nightmare issues, what made you want to continue learning about the paranormal? Because I feel like, no, for real, like, because I wonder.
Might fuel them if
Well, because I know a lot of people who have like disorders like that who want nothing to do with the paranormal because they're like, I got enough of it going on in my own head. I don't need to hear more. What kind of made you want to continue learning about it?
So I've noticed that what helps with my nightmares is actually watching scary movies. And I feel like it's my mind is like, oh, I don't have to come up with it now kind of thing. And, you know, I love scary movies. And then I wanted to research the monsters behind them. So I just fell down a rabbit hole.
That's basically how I ended up following this, is to avoid, because my imagination runs wild, so I need stories. The stories kind of, I call ghost stories ghost traps, because if the ghost is in a story, that's where it belongs, you know. And if I can find the story for the ghost, then I don't have to be plagued by it. You know, it's in the story, and that has been, you know, since I was 6 years old. Kind of the motif is, if I can find out, no matter how scary it is, finding out, it's better than not finding out. It's better than not knowing.
No, that makes sense. You know, because it's like, if you take the mystery out of it, I guess, if you watch the horror movies and you're like, okay, I know how this is going to end, or you can just tell yourself it's like a movie or something. I could understand that being the case. Did you watch like a lot of zombie movies, and maybe that's why the zombies?
Oh, I love zombie movies.
So every night's
But
like,
which came first, the zombie dreams or the zombie movies?
Oh, that's a good question. 'Cause scary movies were kind of banned in my house growing up.
really? So you had parents who didn't like scary movies and stuff as a kid?
Yes.
Oh,
I loved Goosebump books, and I had to hide the fact that I loved Goosebump.
I completely understand that. I loved Goosebumps as well, but I've never thought about, it's like, it makes it almost enjoyable, I guess, because if you love zombie movies and you have zombie dreams all the time, then it's like, okay, cool. It's like a new, like you're like writing a zombie movie in your head every night. So it's,
Does she suffer from sleep paralysis?
so do you suffer from sleep paralysis as well, or have you ever had that?
I don't, but my sister does.
Oh,
Interesting.
I have two blood-related sisters, and one of them has sleep paralysis, and one of them, I think she also has nightmares, but she doesn't really talk about them.
sure. So it could just be something that's like within the family. Interesting. Which I mean, it makes sense to a degree, but like, so your siblings have never told you like about like maybe having a similar experience, or like if they have similar types of nightmares as you?
So one believes if you talk about it, it comes true.
Sure.
So I try not to even tell her my nightmares, but the other one that has the sleep paralysis issues, we talk about nightmares and what she's experienced all the time.
I can understand. It's well, and that's not uncommon for people who like are horrified of paranormal or things like that, especially if, you're really afraid of it, not wanting to speak it into existence, because that's actually like a pretty long-standing belief for a lot of people, is that if you speak the name of the entity, or you speak the whatever it is, there's a reason why, like in Appalachia, you don't say certain things or do certain things because you don't want it to come near you. So I mean, it's a fair reasoning, but I do find it interesting that like both your siblings also have the same disorder in a way, because it's not a super common disorder at all, which is fascinating. Is there a medical term for it at all? For nightmare disorders?
If there is, I don't know it. I just know it as a nightmare disorder.
I mean, and that makes sense too.
Yeah, that's pretty direct.
Yeah, it's pretty direct.
You don't need anything more.
They didn't.
No Latin.
And they didn't like make you do like a whole sleep test or anything like that when you were getting diagnosed?
Not really. When it comes to that, they were mainly focused on the patterns.
Right.
Sure.
Seeing how often they happen and what they were, kind of thing.
Right.
How many per week?
Yeah. How many nightmares do you have per week usually?
I have them every time I sleep.
Oh God, that's so.
Like I said, I'm so used to it. They're dreams. Like the nightmare I had a couple of days ago was so funny to me, but it was a nightmare.
Oh no.
And that was, I turned into a rotisserie chicken, and I was trapped in Publix, and I had to escape. But when the chicken was free, that could have been a nightmare, but it was hilarious.
I mean, technically, I guess that is a nightmare.
It is a nightmare, but it is funny too.
A Publix rotisserie chicken? Oh my God. So
You just ruined dinner.
That's really good though. So there are like nightmares that you have that like, are there any other ones that you found like really interesting, or like not necessarily in the same like notability as a mismatched finger lady, but like in a way that they
Stood out.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. I'm trying to think. There was one where I was trapped in an ice cream truck. Like I had broken into an ice cream truck and I was trapped in it. and I was on like some type of time, like I needed to get out or something bad would have happened. And like the next day, my two older sisters talked about when they were little breaking into an ice cream truck just randomly.
Oh, interesting. So it's almost like the nightmares are kind of like escape rooms in a way. Like, because you said there's a lot of like abandoned buildings and
Abandoned
stuff.
buildings, trying to get out.
Are you good at escape rooms?
I've only been to one, and we got out in pretty good time.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's unorthodox therapy. Go to an escape room.
Go to an escape room if you Well, so we had talked about, like it being like a claircognizance in a way, but I don't know if it necessarily is. I think it might just be one of those things, those weird things that the brain does. But unfortunately, sometimes entities prey upon those things, especially when we're asleep, because we're so vulnerable when we're asleep. That's why people pray before they go to bed. They, invoke different angels or deities to watch over them when they sleep, because we are just like lumps that are so unaware.
Well, I mean, even the word nightmare is a folklore word. We come up with these things, but, we believe that bad dreams were caused by bad entities. And, the nightmare is actually a galloping horse that wakes you from your sleep. You had the nightmare. It drove you to be awake. And so, that's where nightmare derives
I didn't think
from.
I knew that.
Really cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, and that's true. Shakespeare has Queen Mab, who goes into your mind and gives you these terrible nightmare dreams. Most pantheons of beliefs have the dream lord, the Morpheus, the idea of a god figure who is in charge of what happens to you in your sleep. So there's a long connection to our concept of how the supernatural plays with us in our subconscious.
It's true, and then some people are just more susceptible, especially people who astral project or
Yep.
And astral projecting can be a singular experience too. Sometimes your body just for some reason and your spirit just decides, I'm gonna try this one out for size and see what happens.
Gotta go for a run.
So my uncle loves scary stuff, and he watched the movie yesterday, and he just texted me because I told him that we have you on the podcast, and he texted me just now, and he wants to know, what are you going to do if the woman comes back, and will you try and kill her?
Oh God. Oh God.
Well, first I'll get her autograph.
Yes.
The handprint is enough.
When we did, okay, I haven't told a lot of people about this, but when we did the live stream of the behind the scenes, that night I had a dream that she was choking me. But I was so tired that I was like, I'm too tired for this.
Not today, Kato. Yeah, that's great.
I'm too tired.
That's so funny. Like in the dream she was choking you, or like you felt like she actually was in the room doing it?
I felt like she was actually doing it, but I constantly have a water bottle next to me, and sometimes I'll drink in my sleep and just choke a little bit.
Oh no.
So that's probably what was happening, but in my dream, like, and it happened for a split second where I was like, oh, there she is. I'm too tired for this.
That's so funny.
Interesting.
Well, and it's like, oh God, did we like accidentally invoke her into your life? Goodness gracious. Because like,
Maybe you should set up a camera in your room when you sleep.
oh yeah.
A night vision camera, one of those security cameras, or if you have a video camera that has night vision, just one night, just kind of watch yourself sleep. See what you physically do, how fitful you are, things of that nature. Also, you might catch a glimpse of some spooky coming after you.
Yeah.
Boogity woogity.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right.
Yeah. No, that's actually a really good idea.
You're full to the top with woogity woogity. Find the oogity boogity.
Yeah, I wish that there were cameras set up so you could see, and not for you, but like for us to see like the lady crawling up to the ceiling, because I would have loved to know what she looked like doing that, and like why she was on your ceiling. Like, was she watching you? Was she trying to get out the window? And that was just like the fun way to go about it. Like, it's because I can't get over the ceiling thing. Like the door thing, that makes sense. Like she was like, I'm like trying to get into the door, but like why are you on the ceiling? That
It's
seems
weird.
so purposeful.
I had a friend. So I've talked about it before on the podcast where I have a process by which I protect myself. I call it the white box, and it's basically a protective box that I put my fear in, or I imagine. I had a friend who had something very similar, where he talked about that every night before he goes to bed, he would have this thing where he would like try to create a force field around him, and he would like use all of his goodwill, and it was kind of like his evening prayer, his evening mantra. And he actually said one night when he woke up from a nightmare and he saw something trying to get through his little bubble, but it was up against the ceiling. So it couldn't get to him, but it was like on the bubble trying to get to him. Yeah. And I was like, that's so freaky. And what was it? And he said it was it looked like a big bug.
Ew.
Like this big like beetle or something that was just like trying to get to him. And so like now I'm thinking, what if Mismatched Fingers lady came in and couldn't get to you, and so she's on top of a protective bubble, and she's like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
Get me off of this thing.
Alabama hand lady.
The Alabama hand lady.
She can't get through. Because, well, and I mean, like, when it comes to darker, more malevolent entities, it's a lot harder for them to get to us than one would think. People think that we're always just these vulnerable, like things walking through life, but a lot of us, because of our innate feeling that nothing bad's going to happen to us, or like that wouldn't happen to me, that's a pretty intense faith to have in like existing.
It's true. That's very true.
And so just that alone makes it a lot harder for more malevolent entities to get to you. So, or maybe she found you curious and she wanted to,
Well, yeah, I think you have that too. Is what doors do we open when we like accept nightmares as a regular thing? What doors do we open when we're comfortable with dark and scary? And are we inviting, or at very least thinning the wall between malevolent forces and ourselves when we have these open discussions, and when we have all these things? We were just talking earlier about haunted items that we have hanging here. It's like, I have a lot of haunted items, but I'm not allowed to bring them in the house because my wife is like, no. And so that, is the kind of behavior that's probably, keeping me alive, is to have somebody be like, no, not in the house.
Or like the TikTok where it's like tattoos are opening demon portals. Did you see that TikTok?
Oh, I loved it.
I did not.
Yeah.
As Eni had reposted it.
Yeah, there was a TikTok that went around that was like, when you get a tattoo, you're opening a demon portal and all
or
that.
Piercing, yeah.
Yeah,
Tattoo or piercing.
Yes, which is not the case, but very funny. And it's like, maybe that's why we're all so haunted nowadays, but... But yes, but it is true. There's a number of different reasons why entities choose us, or we have these experiences. But nonetheless, it's a very, very scary story. And I'm sorry that it happened to you, but thank you for sharing it with us, because it is so enthralling, and a story that I will always keep with me just because I love it. Not that it happened to you, but like I love the concept of it.
It's a story. It's a good, and it's complete in a lot of ways. It punctuates at seeing something in the physical world, and that so many ghost stories, and I cannot stress this enough. So many ghost stories do not have a narrative. They don't. They are momentary things that you can't. You can only say, well, that was weird, but you have this kind of fascinating series of events, and it actually ends in the ending of the nightmare as well, since the nightmares didn't continue. In the Twilight Zone way, it's like, the nightmares don't continue because she's now in the waking world. She doesn't have to come in your dreams. And there's a good chance that she wants to get as far away from you as possible, too. Because if you were the way that she came into this world, you were very likely the way that she'll be booted out. So there's a good chance that she will try to avoid you like the plague. Because you are, in fact, the one thing that could send her back to wherever she came from.
I mean, it's true. Yeah.
It was the easiest script the easiest script that I've ever had to write. Really, only 6 revisions.
Yeah, JT said that was the easiest script he's ever had to write because it was just so perfectly crafted as a story in general. Just because it's like, you're right, it has such a hard punctuation to it because it's like, okay, she clearly got what she wanted. She got in. And when you see our version of the film, it's a little bit more twisted, don't worry, but it's, that isn't what actually happened to Mindy. So don't worry.
80% of it did.
Yeah.
80%.
Yeah.
But we took our liberties in some ways, just even though it didn't need it. I mean, it's still just as freaky, but
we
we
for
like
cinematic power, potency.
We upgraded the scare.
We upgraded it, yeah.
But yeah, it's and it was so fun to make, and I just imagine like when we watched Marianne like outside with the fingers, or when she put on the fingers and stuff, I was like, I can't imagine like just being in my room unknowingly just seeing this appearing and stuff. Like I'm like, that's horrifying. And I know Marianne. She's the sweetest
woman.
She's so sweet. But I'm like, God, you're horrifying looking. Like, and she's like, thanks. And she ran with it too. We did make her scarier looking for the film, which was fun for JT. Yeah, because we put some VFX on her face to make her look creepy. Because, like, I know you got obviously a good look at her hands, but did you get like a good look at her face or anything like that? Like, did she have any facial features at all?
So I described her as the lady in the movie Mama, like that.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
I've never seen that movie. It wasn't until I Googled her description, like my Nightmare Woman's description, when Mama popped up, and I was like, oh.
Oh,
That's interesting because that entity in that movie had very twisty hands as well.
did it really?
Yeah.
I don't think I've watched.
She had a whole twisty. Her whole body was like twisted, and interestingly enough, that was primarily an actor. I had thought it was all CGI, but it was actually an actor who was able to contort and to do things, and they put a prosthetic on, and a terrifying entity. If you haven't seen the movie, it's a really good movie.
Yeah. I don't know if I've seen it. We might have. We watch a lot of movies. I'm like, I haven't. Okay, great. Well, maybe we'll watch that tonight because that sounds.
It gives you an idea because that's funny because I think in the first time we read it, I thought of Mama. I thought of that entity because it's very striking.
Well, maybe that'll be the next research thing to see if Mama comes from a bit of folklore or something like that. But
yeah, there's a strong Guillermo del Toro vibe to Mama.
Yes.
So it has that like aesthetic.
Right. Oh, well, thank you so much, Mindy, for coming on today and sharing your trauma with us, and and letting us all have the space to talk about our spooky experiences and stuff. So we appreciate you, and thank you for letting us turn it into a film, especially because that was so much fun. But yeah, and if you have any more crazy experiences like that, please let us know because we'd love to hear about them.
Absolutely.
I don't hope that you have any more crazy experiences like that, but if you have any more, let us know. But
if I find my journal, I'm planning on sending it to y'all.
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Although something worth thinking about is you should probably publish these. You should think about revision, editing, and putting it together, because it makes for an interesting anthology. But more than anything else, it is an interesting roadmap to our subconscious. And so you can release it on many levels. It can come out as this horror book of scary stories. But more than that, it's the varied dreams as cataloged by the dreamer. I think that could be of an enormous help too to people who suffer from nightmare disorders.
It's true. Yep.
That's a cool idea.
That is it. I would read that.
Yeah.
Send it to me, and then I'll send it back.
Yes. Yes. But, well, thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. And if you have a ghost mail that you want to send us, you never know, we might make it into a short film, just like Mindy. Please do so by sending it to ghostmail@hauntedcitypodcast.com. Also, when the film drops at 12 a.m. On Wednesday, so tonight, yes, basically tonight, do make sure to go ahead and check that out. We really appreciate it. We worked very hard on it. And so we'd love to see y'all enjoy it as well. You can find that on our YouTube at Red Eye Film Productions, and make sure to subscribe while you're over there. But with that, my name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susi.
And stay spooky, y'all.